All right, this is clearly already one of my more exciting Leaders Who Care episodes because we're talking about my passion, ice hockey. So, Brenda, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
I am glad because everybody knows even when I do introductions on business calls, one of the first things I say when you're introducing yourself is I'm a major hockey fan from Montreal, all the time, just so they get to know it. Um, I'm super glad to have you here. I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about. Let's start with if you can introduce yourself. We'll get to the business stuff, if you will, in a minute, but um, where you live now, where are you originally from, anything about family you want to talk about, maybe something you've never told anybody and you want to reveal to the world. That's always fascinating. Stuff like that. Share with us who you are.
I am from the Toronto area, originally from kind of the Kingston area, but moved up to the Toronto area to really follow my passion, not only in hockey, but in the business world, because I worked in the Parks, Rec, and Culture kind of field for many years. I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a book writer. I am the CEO and founder of a company called SheIs Sports Network, which is
We'll
a
get
mobile.
into it. I'm going to call timeout. We'll get into it.
Okay. All right.
So you said you're a mom of whom?
Oh, so a mom of both wonderful children, Jamie and John. Jamie works for MLSE in the sports world, and my son works for TaylorMade in the golf world. So, followed everybody kind of followed their passion into the sports world for sure.
Well, they both
Yeah,
swing. They're both swinging a different kind of stick, I guess. Uh,
yeah.
um, that's pretty cool. I do. You said Kingston, right?
Yep, I grew up around Kingston in a little place called Marysville. It's a little town, very small, but full of passion and full of sports for sure.
I love Kingston. I did my orientation with Deloitte at Queen's University, which is
Yeah.
one of the most gorgeous universities anywhere, I think. And it's a beautiful area. So we talked about your kids a little bit. What were you like as a kid? I mean, and then as a teenager, were you into nature, being in a town like that? Were you a reader? Were you movies? Obviously, sports. What were you involved in?
I don't think I ever read a book when I was a teenager or growing up, that's for sure, unless it was a book about hockey. I was fascinated by sports. I played it night and day. Loved to be outside. Did not like to be inside in any way, shape, or form. Uh, you know, my parents, I'm sure, I worried them many times because we'd stay out late. One of my favorite stories, Mark, is that when the boys used to come to the door, and we'd play ball hockey out on the road in front of the house, right? And
Yeah.
the boys would come to the door and ask for my brother, who was 3 years younger than me. And then they'd say, "Oh, oh, and Brenda too." And then when I went out, my brother, because I was 3 years older than him, my brother would actually sit on the side of the road and I'd be the one playing. But they didn't want to come and ask for me as the person that could really play better than them and my brother. But it was a yeah, I just I just was a person who, as my children have said many times to me, not everybody's born knowing what their passion is or what to do in life. And I was really lucky that right from day one, I just knew I wanted to be in sports.
Yeah, I get it. We played outside all the time too, whether it was outdoor rink or on the road or every single thing. And it's only when mom or whatever calls you in for dinner that you go in, and then a lot of times you went back out, even at that time.
Yeah.
And and
We used to take the well, I guess we called them skidoos back then, and we take
right, we
them
did.
to the pond and we would shovel the snow off and then put the skates on, leave the boots there, play for hours. And I don't know how our feet didn't freeze, right? And I mean, I always said we were good skaters because we had to skate over the twigs and the cracks and you know, and you played. And yeah, it's like you never thought twice about are my feet going to be cold or anything else like that. And sometimes you'd hear the bell ring, which meant way way back, and you had to come home because supper was ready. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
A
nobody
lot,
worried about you.
I'm sure you know this, a lot of pros talk about how their skill sets were highly developed playing in the outdoor rinks because they had to go over the bumps and the 12 players chasing you around the ice or something to get the puck from you or all that stuff. And you had to be skilled putting the puck between your legs and this and that and whatever and get away and not fall down and keep your balance. It's amazing how many pros, first of all, they look back and love the memories, which is why the outdoor NHL stuff is so exciting too. But but yeah, the skill set they had to develop was incredible. Now most play inside, but that's another
Yep.
story. So it was hockey number one. It wasn't other sports as much, right?
No, I was fascinated by hockey from the beginning. I just um, put the skates on, as my dad would say, and off I went. And yeah, I was fascinated. I had to watch from the side a lot because my brother played, but there was no women's hockey back then. But I played outdoors and I played every chance I could get until I was 16, and then I was lucky enough to. They started a girls' team in the town of Napanee, and I went in there and played.
Love it. I'm surprised when they came calling that they didn't just put you in net because they needed a goalie or something, because that happens a
No,
lot.
no, they would have never put me in there, that's for sure. That wasn't my position. It was my son's position. I always said he picked the
Oh.
goalie because then I couldn't tell him how to play.
Got it. So early on, education-wise, you went to get your master's in municipal management and business admin at a great school, Schulich School of Business at York, which I know well. What were you envisioning then?
I think I was making sure because I knew the path that I was going to follow was to have the skills to be in a male's world. You're working in a sports world that not many women are involved in. And even at that time in the Parks Rec world, to get to be commissioners and directors, it was still very much a male world in a lot of different ways. So I was making sure that I understood the municipal world and I wanted to understand the master's program in the business because you would need a little bit extra. It wasn't like, you know, you had the skills of street skills, as I call them, because you've been playing with hockey with men your whole life, and but there's the other side of it, and I think for me it was ensuring that those skills were in place as I moved forward to try to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, it makes sense. You were a community person, almost, if you will. And did you ever watch the Park and Rec show, the
Yeah,
sitcom?
yeah. And very true to a lot of the stuff that happened back then. Can't happen now. Can't
Right.
happen now. We always laugh. Some of the things we got away with and some of the things we did, all based on, I mean, we just had fun. We just had fun, but now you couldn't do it because, there were too many rules in place. Not too many, but I guess rules in place because, back then nobody thought of suing you. People just got up and had fun with you. Now, something goes wrong. But yeah, no, it was I had just a riot uh, in Parks and Rec so many times because it was a fun place to work. Again, you were working with people who had a passion for,
Right.
the hockey, the pool, the outdoor facilities, the culture part of it. Like there was so many things that people because it was things people did to enjoy life. It wasn't things that people did to like they didn't have to go to work. They were coming to us because they wanted to have fun. They wanted to find the joy or the passion. And so that's what we did. We gave it to them. So it was like, so we were like, it was just fun to do because that's what our jobs were. It was fun.
Yeah, and that's really what community is all about. And it's unfortunate that some of it can't happen now, but that's really what community is all about. And we founded our firm on the premise that leaders and their businesses or any organizations can always do better when they're doing good at the same time. And you've kind of described that you were clearly an early leader in that thinking as well. Can you share with us how your path evolved where you ended up getting that job in that group in Parks and Rec? How did that happen? Or did you just apply?
Well, good question, to be honest, because again, I followed the path. Like I had my children early. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a little bit, working part-time in parks and recs in different places. But I started to understand really quickly that in order to do what I wanted to do, I had to get the experience along with it. So like I worked in the arenas, drove the Zambonis, I got my refrigeration papers. I worked in the pools. I worked in curling clubs. I worked ensuring that I had the background knowledge so that when I got to that place of having to deal with different things, I had the knowledge to say, no, 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 back the truck up. I know what I'm talking about. I've been there, done that, did it. So I think that I think it's so essential for individuals to where they want to go is to follow a path. I was really lucky again because if I didn't like something, I didn't do it, Mark. I stopped and I went to find something that I did like. So I just would, I found myself in one situation and then I went, okay, I'm going to try something over here. And then I'm going to try something over here. And I always looked at, okay, here's the next step I'm going to move up into until I, got to the place where I wanted to be as the Parks and Recreation director and commissioner. And it was like, okay, there I'm at. And and then there was a time when I thought, oh, so I could stay here and earn six figures. I just built the Magna Center, which is in Newmarket, which is a phenomenal, four pad, 25-meter pool, Olympic sized rink, gymnasium, everything. It was phenomenal that we built that there. But then I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to do next? Like, what is it? I could stay here, but if I stay here, what am I going to do? Like, so
Is
I
that,
left.
just interrupt for a second, is that when you wrote Bringing Passion to Life?
That's correct. That's when I wrote Bringing Passion to Life. So I took some time off and wrote Bringing Passion to Life because one of the things that I found when I was the director and doing all these wonderful things in the town and working with such phenomenal staff and everything was is that people would go away to these wonderful courses and then they'd come back and they'd go, oh, I'm going to do this. And that course lasted 48 hours in their mind and then they went back to where they were at. And there was people that, and everybody has them at every job that I've said, they've already retired. They're just coming in every day now, right?
Right.
They're just timing the clicking the clock down. And to me, it would be like I wanted to write a book that was about finding your passion because if you don't find that, it's you only have one life, and it's like I didn't want to myself, I didn't, so I just was trying to write something that I felt was inside of me. I think it's so amazing to sit down and write something and you just let your thoughts out. It's like it's just so cool. It's so
No.
cool and very hard.
And it's so real what you're talking about because, let's face it, you get less chance of burning out and more chance of being happy if you're doing something you're passionate about and perform even better. Unfortunately, not everybody has even the opportunity to do that sometimes, which is a shame because everybody should have the opportunity to do what they love, and stuff. And so I love the fact that you wrote that. And I notice young people now, especially our core business is about talent, and we get hired by companies to get the best talent. And the young people are looking for experiences, not just years of experience, but actual experiences, and to make money at the same time. They want to do both, and I think sometimes a lot of people, took jobs to become an accountant and this and that because that's what was going on. So good for you for not only doing that, but also writing a book about it. And but now going to my favorite part, and this is as a Canadian, as a major hockey fan. This is what leading up to this point right now, which is the best, maybe the best part. Well, not necessarily the best part because the foundation you laid on purpose was fantastic to get to where you were, and I think that's a lesson for everybody. You don't just hop into this position by magic. You learned a lot along the way to get into it. Um, how did you become the commissioner of the Canadian Women's Hockey League?
Good friends of mine now, Sammy Joe Small, who was part of it, and other players, Lisa Marie Breton, other players, the OWHA kind of came to me and because they knew I was kind of not doing anything as because I was a ref and I was just written the book and that the old NWHL had just folded and the players were trying to run the league themselves. And so I said, well, I could do this. I could do this. But if I do this, what we want to do is create a business plan that, you've got too many teams, you've got too many things that are going. So, and we held a huge forum and, I presented them the business plan of how I thought the league could move forward to the best of its ability. And they agreed to it. And they knew that the people beside them probably wouldn't be playing with them in the following year because
Hmm.
we had to go down to less teams to try to make it more competitive and to also spend less dollars. And so for the first 4 or 5 years, I made $30,000 a year. That's what I made. But it didn't matter to me because I was doing something I absolutely adored. And and then and we had to grow because I was the marketing person, I was the sponsorship person,
I
I
bet.
was the business person. I was trying to do things. And then it was really, we had such wonderful, wonderful volunteers and managers. Megan Hewings in Montreal, Rebecca was in Toronto, great players in so many areas. And those people all came together, and there was like a massive kind of push to take it to the next level. And we were proud because we were moving forward. We were having once a month games in the NHL rinks. We had the All-Star game for the first time in the Maple Leaf Gardens. And for me, there was so many times I'd sit on the side of the arena and watch the players as they went out. And the fans were full, and the jumbotrons had their name on it, and different things. And it'd be like, for me, it was such a joy to see the players passionate. We played in the Montreal Forum, which, Carolyn Ouellette had said that was her biggest dream. And I remember, Jeff Molson getting us that opportunity, and watching her play there, and all the fans at the end of the game singing "Ole Ole," and the players' faces were like, it was like, so it was moments and times like that when it was like the passion that was created amongst that was phenomenal. And I think, for me, it was like, how can we, each year we brought it up a different level, but there's still a possibility of paying the players wasn't there until we signed a deal with China. And then we got our players paid. Not a lot of money, like, what people say, well, what's professional and what's not? Well, nobody's going to leave their job for the little bit amount of money we paid them, but it was a start in the right direction. And I think that was essential for us. But, you know, all those players, I'm sure, have massive memories over the 12 years of memories they wouldn't have had, not unlike any of us who played at different times where we were giving opportunities, that those are the memories you take with you, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, I was.
100, yeah, 100%. And I have this conversation a lot when you talk about Stanley Cup playoffs, so the Super Bowl or whatnot, and you see the leagues, and it's so fascinating to go back and look at the first year where the Super Bowl had nobody in the stands and anything, and they were trying to. And remember when goalies, there was one extra goalie, and he didn't know which team he might have to play to substitute if somebody got hurt because they couldn't afford an extra goalie. And so it's got to be interesting being neutral because you don't know if you're gonna who you're gonna play for. But but it's the passion, the investment of time and money that people put in because they had the passion to make it happen. It's kind of like Madonna and Rosie in baseball, except in hockey, if you will, for that movie. And I found it fascinating, especially since I've traveled a lot and I've seen China build an Olympic team now, even, and Saudi we're talking to about hockey. What was the deal with China? What was that all about?
Yeah, so China wanted to make sure that when they hosted the Olympics, that their team was, had the ability to showcase some
Right.
good hockey. So in order to do that, they wanted to play in our league, and in order to do that, we had to come up with a plan that we wouldn't see their games being blown out all the time. So one, they were looking at gathering anybody with Chinese inheritance in the background so they could bring them over. But then we also created a deal where they could take 5 North American players and put them on their team, which
Right.
which would help them learn the skills because they were playing. If you play with better players, you become a better player. That's obvious, right? So we
Well, for
integrate.
most people, some just don't, but for most people,
Sometimes you don't, okay. But they integrated, so they put a lot of money into it. We signed the deal so that our players would get paid. Our players went over there to play. Their players came back here to play. So our players got the experience of going to China also. So the traveling there, we stayed there for a week when we went. The shopping, the sights, the Great Wall, many different things they got to see. So it was kind of a cultural experience along with everything else. But the main reason we did it was, one is we wanted to be part of making a difference and helping hockey grow in the world. Two, we knew that it was an opportunity for us to bring new revenue in. right? New sponsors, new revenue in for us. And three for me was it was an opportunity to get our players paid a little bit of money and to give them an opportunity of a cultural exchange. And so we couldn't provide them with the, $75 or $80,000 a year, but perhaps we could provide them with something unique in this way here to do it. And, there was no doubt about it that, you know, um, the second year was a better year for them. And I think the players learned a ton. I think their management learned a ton from being a part of our league. Um, because it's not just as easy sometimes as putting 18 people together and teaching them skills. Like I'll say this over and over again. A lot of people won't agree with me, Mark, but that's okay. There's a quality of skill you can be maintained that you are taught. There's no doubt about it. There's a quality that you'll go, I've been taught this skill and here's my level. But there's a natural skill, and a natural skill paired with the talent of teaching you skills takes you from here to there.
Right.
And you can see that in certain players. Like, you know, I always said to people, I was lucky. I could pick up any kind of a sport and I could pick it up and play it, right? It would be like, okay, I'd watch for a few seconds, then I could play it. My coordination was there, my hand-eye level skills were there. I could just play it. That
Mhm.
doesn't say that I'm egotistical in the fact that I think I'm a great sports person. It just says there's a natural talent within me.
Right.
Doesn't say I'm above anybody else. It just says that there's a base level. And you can see that in some of the players out there. I always say to people, stop worrying and putting your son or your daughter on the ice 40 hours a week. If they're good, they'll find them because it's a natural skill.
Yeah.
It's just natural. Connor McDavid is natural. Nobody taught him that. People
Well,
taught him how to play the game, the rules of the game, probably gave him good lessons in the game of hockey within the mind. And then he would have to practice over and over again. But he has a natural ability. Sidney Crosby, natural. Wayne Gretzky, lateral skating, natural. Bobby Hull, all those guys. My favorite, obviously it's the Montreal Canadiens, Yvonne Conway,
oh yeah.
Guy Lafleur. These are players that were natural players. I mean, Guy Lafleur ate the worst food you could ever think of, smoked it on the bench. But yet, man, he flew like the wind out there and could, he
I
could,
know. He smoked in the intermissions and all that.
right?
I
So it was
know.
like there's a natural skill, and I think that, so for them, I think what they learned was really good in the fact yeah, they got better. There's no doubt about that, but they'd still have to find those skilled players that are naturally born into being skilled players.
Yeah.
But it was a great lesson for us, a great lesson for us in the business world because signing a contract just meant the beginning of negotiations to them. Signing a contract to me meant, okay, we've got it in writing, right? But, you know, that was a lot of it. But I think they made a great showing in the Olympics, and I think we had a lot to do with that. And I think there was a lot of good stuff that came out of that, of getting in there and getting people, introduced to the game that we love as Canadians, right? Which is hockey.
Yeah, and I think there's so many points there. These are all stepping stones to how great the women's leagues are now. Being just like any sport, as I mentioned, Super Bowl wasn't always the Super Bowl, like the way it is. So you have to those steps have to happen to develop, and it's tough. But when you look back, you kind of enjoyed looking back and seeing what was achieved and some of the moments in hotel rooms or God knows where. And I remember going on travel trips playing hockey where sometimes we were even billeted to live stay in the homes of other players of other teams, which I thought was spectacular. Now they stay in hotels because they're competing or whatever, but that was another thing. In exchange, there's so much, and I do sports analogies to business and life all the time. I'm sure you do too, because it's so right on the money. And I wanted to touch back a little bit on being a woman in business and in hockey. You touched on it a little bit, but um, what were the ups and downs? How did you navigate and thrive? It was a man's world to a great degree, and hockey's. I remember when my kids played girls teams, they weren't supposed to be any hitting, so the guys weren't hitting, but the girls were still hitting the guys, and that type of thing. And they would joke around, did you get her number when she was in the corner with you or something? At 12 years old or 13 years old. But talk to me a little bit about what it felt like, being a woman in that whole world.
Yeah, I never considered it something that I would never not do because, I knew what world I was in. I met phenomenal people. Brian Burke. I remember going to him with the CW and saying, Brian, this is what we want to do. And Berkey was like, tell me how I can help. So there was a ton of men. Jeff Molson with Montreal, same thing, right? Calgary, same thing. When we went to them, there was a ton of guys open to helping us, but you were still in a male-dominated world. And you still are, Mark. Like you still are in a
Yeah,
male-dominated world, right?
yeah,
Like, the PWHL is owned by one male, right? And he stepped up, which is awesome. But it's still it was it's a man that owns the leagues. And again, you thank God he stepped up because the players have that opportunity for him. But it's like for me, it was like it's not. It's the same world we're all still living in, no matter what anybody says. There's certain people that run the world, and there's certain people that have the power in the world. And you have to position yourself to say, how can I not take the power away from them? Because you're not going to, but how can I achieve what I want to achieve within that circle or in that
right.
cycle, right? And I thought we did very well in the CWHL. I find it more difficult right now in what I'm currently trying to do than the CWHL. I found now I learned quick, Mark, because I played men's college hockey. And I did it not because I wanted to, but because back then the we all played every sport. We played every sport, and so we
Right.
all hung out. We were all in recreation. All the gang, the 50 people that were taking the course, we all hung out. We played on every team, and I think we were out drinking one night, and somebody said, "Brenda, you can't make the boys team," and I went like, "Lay down that bet," and it was a joke. It was a complete joke. And then the next that was the time Justine Blaney was suing. And I remember the dean calling me in. I go, Brenda, you have to try out for the team. And I go, what? Oh, like I'm on three teams right now. Anyways, we tried out. The coach put the poor boys through hell. I was already playing on three teams, so I was fine. Like, I'm great, bring it on fitness wise, right? But so I made the team, but we had to switch my jersey. We had to every day I got asked like where you showering. I'm going, I walk in with my uniform on, I walk out with my uniform on. Where do you think I'm showering? But it'd be like, but it was a, but I've said to people, playing boys men's hockey, they're bigger and stronger. The first time I got hit on that ice, I went from the first blue line to the other one, and it was like, so I went from defense. I had to go up to forward because I could skate well, and so and I was weighed 165 back then, and so I could turn for the hits as much as I could to avoid them. But we always laughed. There was a guy on the team that he had long hair, and so they all thought he was me because he would get the butt ends and the spears. And
Oh,
so,
nice.
yeah, thank you, because in the '60s back then. But it was like you learn quickly, and what I learned is that my team was phenomenal. My guys on my team were great. Like, they were
Mm.
sympathetic, they were kind, but the other guys were playing this society's expectations, which I think is what still happens in our world, right? So kind of like there's a ton of guys and men out there that appreciate women and understand it, and there's other people that are trying to play what society depicts for them. And I think that's kind of the hard thing for us at times as women to get through. But
Well, just know that most of those guys are the ones that are insecure in who they are, and
yeah,
uh, and they are because otherwise
yeah.
it wouldn't bother them. I want to go on to something really exciting too. You founded and you're president of SheIs, which I find spectacular, and that's and correct me if I'm wrong. That's growing all women's sports. Is that correct? Um,
That's correct.
that's got to be super exciting to see. You're trying to get people to take women's sports more seriously. I think it's the day and age for it to happen, obviously, because you got a lot of women playing hockey and now basketball and everything, and actually making money also, like big money also. A lot of them talk about what that is, she is, and also about the She Is Sports Network.
Yeah, SheIs was created basically many years ago as a collective to bring women together, all the commissioners together to really cross-pollinate within each other's sports, to get basketball to like baseball. And we did a wonderful a campaign called Women Worth Watching. It was a phenomenal event. It wasn't just me. There was my co-founder that was involved. She was stunning and was excellent in bringing her expertise together for that. And I think, because everything's done with a team. No, not one person is brilliant, in every way. So she was awesome. And then there was, we COVID hit, and that kind of stopped down. But the number one thing, Mark, everybody kept saying to me over and over again, whether I was, the CW commissioner, or I was the SheIs founder and now starting the SheIs Sports Network, was is that, Brenda, we don't know where to watch, and we don't know where the top stories are. And that's not the fault of the existing networks. I mean, they're giving you the top stories based on their fan base. So if you go on to Sportsnet or Rogers or, Peacock, NBC Peacock, you get, what's happening, Formula One, MLB, right now it's NHL, and now football starting. So their top stories are there. And then they do put together, Caitlin, we'll
Right.
get her as the basketball, right? And then, you get the PW a little bit here. But all the other stories aren't told. They're not told, right? Nobody knows where Coco's playing in the next tennis world. Nobody knows who just broke a record someplace in Australia, or, nobody knows that, hockey could be starting in Saudi Arabia. Nobody knows those stories because women, and there's phenomenal newsletters out there and websites, Just Women's Sports, there's a ton of those. But I wanted to create a mobile app that was unique that nobody's done. And so
Cool.
we created the mobile app, and that's about sharing where to watch, what's the top stories, and the content is developed by the fans. So I'm not writing the content. We pull it in from other places. So we pull it in from the WNBA, but then we send it back to the WNBA, just like Apple News, Apple TV, you send it back. But you as a broadcaster, or you as a fan, can go to a game, write the story, take a picture, and also upload it. Because we know the new stats basically say that 70% of all of us right now believe that we are the content creators for everything. Right? So, so let's give the
To
public
do
what they need,
it.
and let's make them journalists. Let's make them writers. Because for women's sports, there's always been a ton of people that wants to write but has no place to put their stories. And so for us, it was about giving the opportunity for the fan to be involved to create the content, to go live, to show us phenomenal skills that are out there. For the athletes to put their data in, because it's the only app that the athlete can upload their own data and also upload anything they want to talk to about themselves. So it gives the power to the athlete on an app that a sports app doesn't usually have. So it's unique, and then it's specifically targeted to women only. And so we're out trying to raise money. And that's where it becomes a little bit more difficult, because people that are supporting women founders are less than 2% of what founding dollars go to.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got women's sports. So, it's
But I think it's primed. It's primed to change, though. I'm not going to say that overnight, all of a sudden it's going to be 50% women, but it's primed to change. There's a lot of women founders and startups that are really making it. I mean, I actually placed the CEO of the National Women's History Museum. We were super proud that they picked us to do it. They could have picked just an all-woman search firm, but we placed her there, and they are recognizing the amazing feats that women have had that has never been reported in history, from Florence Nightingale. Everybody knows that name, but there's a whole bunch of other Florence Nightingales that people don't know, and they invented things. So I think we're at a point where hopefully it's not there yet, but it's farther than it was. And we were actually launched on International Women's Day at the UN headquarters about 6 years ago, our firm, because our first everything was about women leadership, and that we got started. So you're touching on and I love women, so what more could you ask for, So, um, they say in LA we got to leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So I just have one more question here. We'll have to leave them wanting more. But one client told me in 2021, the year after the pandemic year, said that was the year that flew by slowly, which I thought was a brilliant statement, because sometimes it feels like it was yesterday and sometimes years ago. And with everything that's happened, and now it's already 2025, amazingly enough, going fast. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
I think I'm most grateful for my children, to be honest with you, because they brought me so many lessons that I've learned from them as I watch them grow up. And I think I'm massively grateful for them, how they supported my journey of being outside the box for sure, right? And, I'm thankful for my partner that, because again, support is such a big part of your life, right? Like people supporting your dreams or your beliefs
Yeah.
are more than, and I'm very hopeful, and I say this with honesty and truth within my heart. I'm hopeful for the world. I think that, there's so much negativity talk out there about our world and who people are that are running it. But what I know is that in every single case, light always beats darkness. And I think for us, there's a lot of us that are here to bring that light to the head. And so most people are going, oh my gosh, this is terrible what's happening. I'm going, it is, but there's such an opportunity for us now. And I think, so I'm pretty hopeful for what will happen in our world in years to come. Maybe not overnight, but in years to come, I think there'll be a big difference.
Yeah, well said. Well, I'm grateful to have a new friend. That's cool. And you are a leader who cares, and because we impact, and you kind of said it, we learned so much during that whole journey in sports and in hockey, the leadership, the teamwork, you name it, all the stuff that goes with it, how to win, how to lose, etc. And they're great experiences, and we influence and we get influenced by so many people along the way too that sometimes don't even know they impacted people, but they do. And so thank you for being just that, and thank you for being on the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to have my story told.
My pleasure.